Billy, welcome to Free Your Voice.
What's up, Dustin? How are you?
Man, I have to say, you are one of the coolest dads I know in the world. I mean, you're a rock legend and a dad. Like, does that ever hit you? Like, you get to cover both sides?
Oh, I'm very thankful for both. Two of them are two of my favorite things in the world. I love music, and I love my family. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm very thankful, but there's plenty of guys out there who have managed to have a successful music career and have kids. So, I'm just cruising along.
But how did you not blow up your life, Billy? I mean, you've been able to accomplish a lot. And you know some of the people that I know, they blew their lives up. They blew their careers up. How did you not go in that direction?
You know, uh, I think there's a couple things. I think I've always been a pretty level-headed person. I do think that personality has a lot to do with it, but I also think your circle, who you surround yourself with, is really important. I think a lot of people surround themselves with yes men and maybe put themselves in bad situations. Whereas for me, so my wife and I have been together for 24 years now. We met in high school and we have been
What?
together for 24 years. Yes.
24
Yes.
years. What's the
Yes.
secret ingredient?
I think you have to have some similar ideals. You know what I mean? I really think you do. I think you have to believe in like simple things. We're both vegans. We both love animals. That's something that we met in high school, and we were both like that back then, and that was something that we connected with. Um, like that we were both, kind of the odd kids at school. We sat a little bit outside of the norm, and I think we connected on that. Like, I think you just have to find your people. Like, sometimes you meet people and you're like, oh, they're like, we just have a thing that's similar. We feel the same about a lot of situations, and I think you just kind of know, and I know people say love at first sight is silly, but like I swear, the second I saw her, I was just like, that's it. Like that's the one for me, and we've been together for quite a long time.
And the temptation, though, along the way. I mean, how did you hold yourself accountable through it all? I mean, you reach a stage, you're selling out stadiums. You have a lot of people probably proposing to you. Um, how did you keep away from it?
I mean, again, I think it goes back to being level-headed. Like, I'm not stupid. Like, I had something good. Why would I ruin it? I think so many people think so short-sighted. Like, well, what's one night in your life to ruin like an entire like life that you could have with someone? It was just never worth it to me. I never even thought twice. I just chose to just not put myself in those situations. And I'm also a bit of a workaholic. Like, I really love what I do. I love making music, and as you know, like I'm an illustrator as well. I love to draw. Like those are two things that are really important to me. And after the concert, a lot of times the other bands will go out and party, and I go back to my hotel room and just work on stuff because that was my happy place. Like me sitting in a room by myself, listening to music, drawing, or making music. Like that's always my happy place. And for me, like I just kind of always just focused on that, and it kept me on the right path.
Now, what kind of music? Like when you're trying to find that creative zone, it probably can't be something like boom, boom, boom. Like, what are you listening to that kind of resets your brain or gets into a frequency where you're starting to connect dots?
Oh, I listen to a lot of boom 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 for sure. I like a lot of hard music. It's whatever I'm into. Sometimes I'll get into an album and I'm just obsessed with that album for a week, and I just kind of go, through that for, or sometimes if I'm struggling with some art, and that's the great thing about, I feel like, because and I'm sure we'll get into this because a lot of listeners probably know me for Good Charlotte, but they might not know that I also work as an illustrator. And the best part is like burnout. When I get burnout with one, I can switch to the other, So going back and forth between the two is really nice to me. But oftentimes, I'll be sitting there working on some art and I might listen to something and then like an idea comes in my head, like, oh, that'd be great for a song. And like all I can think about is I want to go work on music, but I have to get this artwork done right now. So sometimes it's a little counterintuitive in that sense where like it just not counterintuitive, but counterproductive, I guess, where sometimes it sends my brain. So um, a lot of times I will listen to podcasts or YouTube and stuff like that because I feel like I'm soaking in information. Sometimes it's like that secondhand where you're like focusing on the drawing, but I'll listen to YouTube, whether it's some kind of instructional tutorial or something like that. And I feel like my brain is sort of like soaking in the knowledge while I'm drawing. versus if I was staring and listening to it, my brain would maybe kind of trail off and I'd get so it's almost a weird thing. And then, a lot of times I'll watch videos about music theory, where people are just talking about dissecting a song and why this major chord sounds nice here and why the seventh chord in the key leads into the chorus and like all these nice things about music theory, which is fascinating to me. And I love to listen to that stuff while I'm drawing because it's just the opposite. And then when I sit down to play music, I'm like, oh, I remember it. Like it's in there somehow, it's just kind of buried in there. So I don't know. I'm listening to all over the place.
It's interesting through the years that I've known you that you always are just in a good mood. And
Mm,
it can't just be because you've had success. It tells me it's a mindset because you'll also have bad days. There must be days you're frustrated and stressed out
of
and the
course.
kids are pushing you to the limits, that it's your mindset.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I guess I don't really talk about that very often and stuff, but I do. I have found a way to like. And I think everybody needs this. Like, you have to know what your happy place is. You have to know the things that make you happy, And I know that if I don't get to be creative, like I get grumpy, And I've known that for a long time. Whether it's 5 minutes on the piano or just a few minutes to sketch out an idea, or even something like that that gets that part of my brain. As soon as that part of my brain gets turned on, I forget about everything else that's stressing me out, And it really is just that thing that I don't want to ever have to be like, well, I can't find work here. I got to go get a job, a desk job or something, because I think I would go insane. Like I have to be creative, and I think that's what keeps me happy. Like in it, I feel sometimes because I see people online, they talk about like, oh, I'm depressed or I'm in this deep state of depression and life is so hard, and I feel for you because I know it sucks when you're down, But I keep thinking, I guess I don't really know what that feels like because when I get depressed, like I know what to do to snap myself out of it, And I've always been like that. I just have to go and like turn on that part of me that makes stuff, and instantly the depression starts to go away because I go to my happy place, even if it's maybe I'm not getting the results I want, or maybe I'm not getting as far in my career as I want. I'm always happy when I'm making stuff, and I have to remind myself that all the time. So you know it's and the hard thing for me, like say we go on vacation like with the family, that's supposed to be fun. You're going on vacation with your family, but I don't get to create when I'm on vacation. So that's like it's kind of like a weird thing where it's like you have to turn off work, but when your work is the thing that makes you happy, you don't want to not work because it's what makes you happy. So like I struggle a little bit with vacations. I love going places with my family and doing things, but like the whole time I'm thinking like, man, I want to make something, you know?
And does she beat on you? Like, does your wife like, come on, Billy, put your freaking phone down?
Of course, and I'm always like, "Oh, and you're right, you're right," and like, so for the I'm good. Like I don't sit there and work through vacation. I don't, because I want to enjoy the moment. I want to be with my family. But of course, like
So you have Dustin text and you're like, come on, man, I'm trying to be with my family. I'm like, Billy, I need you.
yeah, so and you did. You texted me when I was on a little spring break trip last weekend, but that was okay. Because we were setting up the next week, so that's different. But
That
yeah,
is
like
different.
I don't know. I think that's part of being happy is just you got to find your happy place, whether it's just something small that makes you happy, and you got to know that you have to make time for it. Even if it's a couple minutes here and there, you got to make time for that stuff in your life.
No, it sounds like though you've reached this stage of having, call it emotional intelligence, call it awareness. When do you think it hit you? Where you started to be more aware that people tell you who they are the first time, the signs are there in the beginning. When did you start to become more aware?
Uh, I think it's definitely been a gradual thing. I think some of those things hit me quickly. So when Good Charlotte signed our first record deal, I was still a senior in high school. Right. So I was, just about to graduate high school, and our band was starting to do well. We got a record deal, and my parents had to come in and talk to the principal and say, hey, he's got to go to LA to make this album, but he's still got a couple of months of school left. And, we had to work this out. So I went into this industry very young, and excited, to get out there. And then immediately you put yourself out there, and the first thing you get is not praise. You get beat down quickly. You get all the haters, you get people telling you what you're not doing good, and that you kind of have to build up that emotional toughness like a wall quickly. Like, okay, that's not what I'm expecting. And everybody thought that, Good Charlotte, we were like a pop punk band, like that's the genre that we got put in. So immediately you've got all these sort of like older music industry people interviewing you who grew up with like real punk music, and they're like, oh, these kids don't know real punk. And their job is to interview you for a magazine or for radio, and you don't necessarily love the band, just like, and it's a job for them. They don't necessarily love every band they're going to interview, and that's fine. It's their job. So a lot of times they get stuck. Oh, these kids coming out, with these songs on MTV and thinking they're punk. Like, I'm going to test these. I'm going to test their punkness. I'm going to ask them some questions about some old school stuff, and I'm going to catch these guys. And um, but I didn't really grow up listening to punk rock. Like, that wasn't my thing. I was more of a metalhead. Like, I always grew up listening to kind of like, I loved Korn, I loved Nine Inch Nails, like that, like kind of
They were
heavier stuff.
incredible. I mean, dude, those bands were amazing. I
Yeah,
remember
I
going to a
I, I
Korn
still listen to
concert,
them.
and it was crazy. It was in Baltimore. It was
Yeah,
probably one of the most amazing Korn concerts or concerts I'd ever been to.
I agree. They're incredible. So like, people would ask these questions, and right away I'd be like, "Ugh, well, I don't know shit about punk. Like, I'm gonna fail this, and then they're gonna be like, oh, busted, got you. So I felt like, appearance wise, I really started to like dress almost not like a character, but like a hyper version of myself. Like, I was like, um, I would wear, like, lots of eyeliner and like gothy kind of bands, and kind of show people like, I'm like the gothy metal kid. I'm not the punk kid. And I felt like I sort of had to create this larger than life persona to like show right away that like, I'm not trying to be something like, this is me, like, this is me. This is what I want people to see me as. So I kind of just like went to this, I don't know, like, over the top version of myself, just to sort of combat what I didn't want people to assume they knew me. But you listen to the music, you see the band, you're like, oh, I know these guys. I'm like, no, you don't actually, because just listening to someone's music can't. So I feel like early on in life, I had to come with this sort of like, get used to people like telling you that this is what you are, this is what you can't do, and this is what we think you should do, and this is the box that you have to fit in. And I would always be like, that's not, that one box does not fit everybody. It doesn't. Everybody's different, and that's the best part of being in band is you're a collection of like all these different people's backgrounds and musical interests, and that's what makes the sound of a band. Like, if everybody listened to all the same bands and then they made the next band, every band would sound the same. But that's what's the fun thing of music, is you're a mix of everybody's influences. So I know this is probably a long-winded answer, and I give long-winded answers, so be ready
I
for that.
like it. It's how I learn. So this moment that you made it, do you remember that experience to go, "Oh," I mean, it must be a dream. You must have thought or felt something's going to happen. They're going to cancel. They're not going to give us that there had to be so many emotions in you, and probably still today. I mean, you're an incredibly successful illustrator. You're now in the video game space. Like, do you still have doubt that something it's too good to be true, or do you know that your work, that it has been excellence and it will attract excellence?
Both, and that is the key, is that work is the key word right there. You have to keep working. You have to stay hungry, and you have to get better. You know what I mean? Because if you don't, the next kid's coming right up behind you, and he's going to take it from you. And so I don't worry that the floor will get like taken away, because I feel like I've worked hard enough in this, that I've built enough of like a foundation, that's not going to fall out, because I've been doing this. And with everything I do, I try to get in at the ground level and like build up, so that if you get in at the ground level and you build yourself up, you can't pull the floor out, because you've got 10 floors underneath you still. So with everything I've done, I feel like we grinded, same thing with our band. We put our first record out. Of course, we signed a record deal, and everybody's excited. Wow, we got signed to Epic Records on Sony, like, our first record deals with a major label. And we get to make videos and go on tour, and we put the album out, and I think we only sold like 100,000 copies or something like that. And to us, we're like, 100,000 copies, holy crap! Like, before that, we sold like, you're just literally burning CDs and
It
selling
was
them at the coffee shop.
progress,
Right.
Billy.
And we
It
sold
was
100,000
progress.
records, and we thought, holy crap. And the record label was like, and we're coming right off of like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears era, where like record labels are just like cashing in with these record sales that are out of control. And then, our band gets signed, and that we put the record out, and we almost got dropped after that, because they were like, you only sold 100,000 records. Like, like, we sell millions of records. That's what labels do. You guys couldn't even go gold. So that was definitely like a awakening moment, where you realize like, okay, the single didn't hit. It didn't get played much on the radio. And this was like Little Things. That was our first song, which now people know it. But at the time, and I mean, were you in Maryland back then?
Yeah,
Right. Okay. So in Maryland, sure, we got some good local play, and Maryland was cool
absolutely.
to us.
98 Rock was playing it. I
Yeah,
mean,
98
absolutely.
Rock, HFS, DC 101, all
Yep.
those bands back in the day. would give us love, but the song didn't really hit. So we just went on tour for like 2 years straight. I'm pretty sure like we look back on it, we played like 368 shows in a year. Sometimes we played 2 shows in a day, like just every day for like 2 years straight. We missed birthdays, we missed holidays, we missed everything. We just were on
Ah,
tour
so you're saying there
nonstop.
will always be a cost.
There will always be a cost, of course. Like you have to go all in and you have to sacrifice. Like if this is what we're doing the band, and all five guys in the band have to be. If you got one guy in your band who's not willing to commit to the same, you're gonna like you all have to be on the same page. You all have to make sacrifices, and you have to work. You have to build it up. Because one big song on the radio is great, but when that song like is over and you don't get a second big song, your career is done.
That's the challenge. I mean, Gene Simmons said to me not too long ago, he goes, Dustin, fame is fleeting. And I didn't understand it at first, but I get it now. That to maintain it, you have to be in the public's eye. You have to keep creating activity. And you've been able to do that, Billy. So jumping from music to your love, you were the one sketching. You were the one in the back with the pen. "God, my pen's not working. All right, I need a pencil. I need a that you were sketching out all these ideas in your head. How did you make that transition?
That was first actually. Like art was first. I always thought that's what I would do from a very young age. Sitting in front of TV watching Saturday morning cartoons or Disney movies, and I'd sit there with my paper and looking up at the TV trying to copy the characters off the TV. So art was actually first. I always thought for sure I'll be an animator or a comic book artist. And then I guess around maybe 15 or so, I always loved music. I had no musicians in my family. I didn't ever like see people playing music. Like it wasn't like mom or dad had instruments around the house or uncles or something. Like just I didn't have any music in my family. I never thought I could play music. That the thought just never really crossed my mind because I was like, I don't know, I'm not a musician. I loved it. I mean, I've got pictures of myself as a kid sitting in front of a record player with like giant earphones on, stacks of records, and I would just like flip through them and play music. And that was like I would sit there and just listen to music as a kid. Like I loved it growing up. My room was covered in all my favorite bands posters, and music was such a huge part of my life. But I just thought I'm going to be an artist, but I love music. And then sometime around 15, on like a kid came into school for like a school project, and he like played a song or something, and like the teacher said, we've got a little bit extra time. Do you want to play something for the class? So he like kicks his distortion pedal on and starts playing these like Nirvana riffs on his guitar. And there was this crazy moment where the tangible idea of the song was in his hands. Like my favorite songs that I've listened to, he was like making that song come out of his hands. And it was just like a light bulb. Like I want to make the songs come out of and I went home and I was to my parents, like, I want to get a guitar. And they were like, what? And I was like, I want to get a guitar. And they were kind of like, okay, sure. And so I got like the worst guitar ever for Christmas. It was, like a $99 guitar from like JCPenney that had a speaker built into it and had like a battery. Like it was crap. But I played that thing until my fingers bled, until it couldn't even work anymore. I was like obsessed with this guitar.
You
And
mastered it.
yeah, I mean, it
Isn't
took
that
me a
what it
while to master it, but I was obsessed,
But
like that's
isn't that what
all
it takes though, Billy? I mean, I
it
see people,
does.
people try to cut in line. They try to get to a spot before they were actually ready. They skipped over the apprenticeship. That it sounds like what you did in your journey, how you got there, was that you went all in. There wasn't cheating, there wasn't stealing. It was, I have to master this. I have to be the one to show up. I've got to do the 2 years of probably some of those venues weren't the best looking
Of
venues in the
course not.
world, I have to
And sometimes
imagine.
nobody was there.
You had to see the room as if 1,000 people were there, and you had to treat it as such
Of
because
course.
passion's contagious.
Yes, yes, and like you said with sacrifices, I gave up art because I was like, okay, I want to play music. Like I'm done with drawing. I packed that up. That was the old me. Now I'm music Billy. And then literally just closed that chapter, stopped drawing, and I went all in on guitar because I thought this is way cooler. Like I want to play music. And like you said before, you make sacrifices, you make decisions, and you have to go all in on something. But then we got on tour, and you only play for an hour a day. And when you're opening on your first tour, you might play 30 minutes. So for the whole rest of the day, you have nothing to do. Sometimes you're in, Nebraska or Wyoming or something, and there's nothing around. The concert venue is out like in a dirt field, someplace that someone built, and there's literally nothing to do. And you're like, I have an entire day to kill until the 30 minutes to get on stage. I thought I should start drawing again. I need something to occupy my time. So I definitely had shut it down for a couple years, probably like 15 to 18 or something. There was no drawing. And then I kind of got back into it. So one of my favorite things to do on tour would always be like find the local comic shop because there's always like cool gems you can find in all these cities around, like whether I'm in like, France or Japan or Wyoming or wherever it was, I'd be like, I want to find the comic shop here. I want to go check out, what the vibe is. So I'd start going these, and that got me back into wanting to draw because I would see all this great artwork and all these comics because I was really into comics before that, and that was really the thing that got me back into making art was just sort of this comic book tour of America where I'd always just go in and find these, and then I found myself just like, okay, well, why can't I do both? Like I love both. There's room for both.
You mastered the next. I mean, it's amazing what you've been able to do in your art because that's what it is. And now video games. What was your favorite video game growing up?
I mean, I started with Nintendo, of course, just the classics. Legend of Zelda, probably any Zelda, old, new. I love all those. I think that's such a great franchise. Trying to think. I loved Mortal Kombat was really big. I'd go to the
Mortal
arcade,
Kombat.
like ride my
That was a
skateboard to the
great game.
arcade, like literally just so I could go play Mortal Kombat before it was, before you could get it on consoles. I was big into that. But man, I still play video games all the time. I'm a big
you,
gamer.
you still do it. So talk about this video game you're involved with, creating the music, the soundtrack.
Yeah, so something I've been really trying to do, and this is probably another one of those long-winded answers. I always had this vision from like 18 or so when I got into music, and I kept thinking, okay, so like I'm young, I've got lots of energy, I can get up on stage, I can do this forever. But what happens when I'm like in my 40s and I don't want to do this anymore? Where am I going to be? And I always thought, okay, that chapter of my life is when I'm going to be film composer Billy, where I'm going to like score movies and TV and stuff. Like I always imagined at that point in my age, I want to be, scoring. And I'm 42 now. So I was like, okay, that chapter is here. It's time to figure that out. What am I going to do? So for the last, I guess, year or so, maybe, again, like we talk about putting in the work, I wanted to become a composer and figure out how to do that. But I don't know how to play all those instruments. But luckily, we're at a place now where the keyboard can literally mimic anything. Like the sound packs that you can get and the samples are like incredible these days. You can play anything on a piano and you can have any instrument in the orchestra. But that's one thing. Just being able to play the notes is different than understanding how they work. Like I wanted to know what instruments are in a standard orchestra. Where do they sit in the pit? Who sits on the right? Who sits on the left? What instruments are closest? What instruments pair well together? What instruments don't pair well together? Like when you see the way like a symphony or like a score is written, why do some instrument these guys play the lead often, where these guys hold down, the chords, or like you might hear a harp in this part, or why, so I started just studying like crazy, watching YouTube videos. Like YouTube is it's the best. It's free school. YouTube is incredible. You can learn anything on YouTube. So I just started studying, and I would pick each week. Like this week, let's do the viola. I'm just going to watch videos about the viola, like how it works, how it sounds, what its note range is, and just understand it. Next week, let's do bassoons. This week, let's go to flute, and I would just go through instrument by instrument and kind of understand how those instruments work and how so then I got to the point where like, okay, I know exactly what's in a standard orchestra. I know where everything sits. I know how they all play together. And now let me try to write some stuff, So I was trying to write some stuff, and I was like, okay, this stuff sounds good. But like, I don't sound like John Williams. I don't sound like Danny Elfman. Like, how do my heroes make this incredible work? So then, I got sheet music, like full orchestrated scores of like soundtracks where it would have the flute line, then the trumpet line, then the bassoon line, then the violin line. And I would sit there and I would recreate these like John Williams pieces in my computer just to see, to break it down. I know this isn't exactly the question you asked, but I know this
It's
prefaces it well.
perfect. It goes
Okay.
directly in because I'm going to be jumping into something else. So please
Okay,
continue.
okay, good. So this was sort of my last year or so, was really focusing on, I want to be a composer, and I want to be able to I want to be able to talk the talk. Like if I'm in a room with another composer, I want to know the terms. I want to know the way and that's like anything in life. Anything is daunting when you look at a new task, right? You look at any kind of a task and you think like, oh my gosh, that's overwhelming. I can't learn something. But if you break it down into like 20 different steps and you just focus on one step at a time until you master step one, then you go on to step two, and then you go on to step three. And then you look back and you think it's not daunting anymore because like I've broken it apart and I see all the different pieces. So that's what it was. So recreating these huge, like I did a couple John Williams pieces, a couple Danny Elfman pieces, which are my two favorite composers, just to understand their minds. What chords are they using? What instruments are they playing together? And what are some trends that you see happen often in their music? And just recreating their music was, I felt like I was 15 again playing the guitar for the first time
You were
because
having
I was
fun
learning. Yeah, I was having fun. Like, I couldn't wait to get back in my room. And the hard thing is, like, it wasn't work. I wasn't getting paid, you know? So, like, sometimes it's hard to justify the amount of time you put into something when it's not work. But I kept thinking, I'm not going to get work doing this. No one's going to say, oh, he was a guitar player in a band that sold 1 million records, or, you know, however, whatever we did. Um, let's have him compose our film. That's not going to happen. It's just not. You know what I mean? Like, you have to show that I've done the work and I understand it. So I did that and started, you know, making pieces that I felt better and better about. And in fact, I did a podcast a few months ago, a music podcast with one of my favorite YouTubers. And I talked about how I wanted to do this. You know, I want to get into video game music. And like a week later, this company writes, "Hey, we saw you on this podcast talking about how you want to do film music. You know, we're big fans of Good Charlotte. We checked out some of the stuff you've been doing. We're working on this video game. Do you want to score the game?" And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You know, like, yeah, like this is what I want. So the game came out 2 weeks ago, maybe. It's called 1v1.lol. It's on PC and mobile. It's a free game. It's similar, sort of in the vein of Fortnite or something, like, you know, one of those popular games. But the game had been out for a while, and they wanted to revamp it with new graphics, new music, sort of like an overhaul for the game. So I got to do a handful of different songs for that. The theme music when you first turn the game on, then there's different music while you're waiting for the game to start. Then when you're in the store, like, you know, buying new upgrades for your characters, I did different music for that. So there's a handful of different pieces in the game, and it was such a great experience. It was really, really fun. All the things I'd been working on, I got to use in the game.
This wasn't an overnight success.
No,
This was 27 years plus
sure, that
in the
too, you know?
making.
Yes, you know, and I couldn't have done, you know, like, I kept thinking when Good Charlotte was doing really well back in like 2003 or something, it was probably like our height. I didn't have the work discipline, you know, and the knowledge that I have now, you know? And so I kept thinking, oh, wouldn't it have been great for me to be like knocking down these companies asking if I could score their films when Good Charlotte's name was everywhere? Because sure, they'd be like, oh, that band's the hottest band in the world right now.
Yeah.
Let's get them on the
You did
project.
it on your own, Billy.
But sure, you know, that too. And
Did
that
it on
feels
your own.
nice, you know, that like I didn't necessarily ride those coattails. I sort of built my own little side lane outside of it by just putting in the work.
So I've reached the age of 40, so we're both old men,
Yeah.
and I have more gray than you. I don't know what your secret is, but
I just
I
shave
have,
a lot, you know.
dude, I got to do that because my kids were pointing out like, Dad, you got a lot of gray in there. I'm like, that's
There's
called
gray in here,
wisdom.
don't worry. I
Yeah,
trim it
and
down. I don't have grays up here, and I still have my hair. You still have your hair too, so
yeah, I
that's
got
good,
my
you know?
hair. I got my hair, and then I'm getting these really weird wrinkles in my forehead. I call them like wisdom lines. I don't know if they
Yeah, that
hit you
happens,
yet.
right? I know.
Yeah, the wisdom lines have hit me, and I've been trying to figure out the definition of success. What does Billy Martin think? What is your definition?
And, you know, this is crazy because I would think that from anyone on the outside, you would think that I'm very successful, but I still feel like I have so much to do, you know? Like, I still feel like, yes, I'm successful, but I still, you know, like that feeling like I've made it, I'm good. I don't think I'll ever have that feeling that like I've made it. I always think that there's going to be something else that I want to accomplish or to do, but I think success is I support my family. You know, I pay for my mortgage, our trips, our food, like all the activities my kids do, like everything we do in our life. I support my family all off of music and art. That's all I do. You know, I sit down in my room each day and I draw something or I make music, and that's how I support my family. Like, that's a good life. You know what I mean? Like,
That's a
that
great
for me,
life.
that should be the definition. Although I keep thinking I want to be working on bigger projects and I want big, you know, like more. I want bigger. I want more. Like, I still feel like I'm not starting out, but like I'm in the middle, you know? Like, I'm not struggling to get somewhere. I'm not John Williams scoring movies, you know, but I'm right here in the middle, which is okay. It's okay to be in the middle. You know what I mean?
It
It's
is
it's like
okay,
it's
but you
very
sound
rare. You know,
but you're
John Williams
still
is a diamond
yeah.
in the rough.
He definitely is. There was somebody recently, I won't name him so he doesn't come after me, but very rich and famous, like the song goes, billionaire. And the person doesn't have time to talk to his girlfriend 3 times a week. I can look at that and go, that's not success, dude. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
imagine you
No.
finally reach the stage of having everything upon any, many, many billions of dollars behind your name, and you don't have time. Like you're in your 70s and you're not able to go do things that you want to do. You're stuck to this schedule and this grind. I go, that can't be, that's slavery.
Yeah. No, and I guess to every person their definition of success is different, but that doesn't sound, you know, like I love to spend time with my family. Like, so both my kids are, I have two boys and they're super into basketball. They're both really good and they play on multiple teams and they play all the time. So between my kids, we're at like 8 practices a week. Sometimes it's 2 practices a day. We travel almost every weekend to somewhere for tournaments. So like my basketball is a major part of my life. And I go to every practice for both kids that I can't. Like I hate if I miss one practice, it's just practice. And they practice every single day, you know? And I hate if I miss a practice. Like I want to be there every single time. And same with my wife. We both go together to every single practice. And it's really important to me. And there has been opportunities, just this probably is another tangent where prior to this, a couple years ago, I was really focused on producing. I thought, okay, maybe my second chapter is being a producer, working with young artists and kind of help co-write, produce, engineer in the studio for artists. And I did do a handful of that and I really liked it. But the hard part was when you're the producer, you kind of have to work on the artist schedule. You have to show up when they show up. You want to work when they want to work. And a lot of these young artists, they didn't have kids like me. They're like, oh, I want to work from like 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. And I'm like, no, I want to work at 9 a.m. till like 4 o'clock. And they're like, 9 a.m., bro. I'm just going to bed. And I'm like, and it's not going to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and I started to think like, that's more important to me. What's more important? Like going in and working with these artists and being a producer and getting this crazy career as a producer, or going to my kids' practice. I'm like, I'm going to pick practice every time. Like I want to go. So that's why I've sort of steered more in the composer route, because it's me by myself. I can work on my schedule, on my time. I'm not banking on I don't have to wait for other artists to show up. I'm still being creative. I'm making music that I'm proud of, and I can do it when I want to do it
You're
so that I
finding the
can make time for my
balance. I
family.
mean, that's progress. That you've been able to find that balance by the age of 42. I mean, there are people that don't find the balance at all, and they look back and they go, "But there were people around you like Billy that they could have followed those clues." Because I do believe that success leaves clues. I think failure leaves clues.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when people aren't doing the small things, they can't do the big things.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, sacrifices. Like I would see other friends of mine who would be in the studio, like working with these bands that I looked up to and making these awesome albums. And I thought, man, like that's so fun. Like I wish I could be that, but it's not my lifestyle. It's not me, And like sometimes it's a hard pill to swallow, like just if I really want that, then I have to give up the family life, And those are decisions that you have to make. And I think some people, they just like refuse to give up both, and then they're just stuck spinning in a circle. You're just on this like treadmill that's in a circle, and you're like, I just can't catch up. I'm like, because you're not willing to make sacrifices and you're not willing to prioritize, And I think once you do that, you'll find success. And I also, I think sometimes I give this advice and I say it, but I'm a little bit guilty of doing this. But like I'm also trying to keep two careers going at the same time, art and music. If I picked one and only focused on one, I bet I would be farther in it. I bet I would be maybe scoring movies right now or getting to a place where, because I'm only focused on that. Or if I got rid of music and I only focused on art, maybe I'd have my own animated show or my own like something bigger where I was only focused on that. But I love both so much that like my happy place is having both. And so that's been a hard balance, but I do think I've kind of figured out how to do both.
Billy Martin, thank you so much for freeing your voice.